Hi everyone, this is Catching Up with the Nerds with your hosts Tom and JC. This is a podcast about two dads that are catching up on all the nerdy stuff we missed, sharing how we pass on our nerdy passions to our kids, and deep diving into nerd pop culture to make it more accessible for you. Welcome back everyone.
Good day, people. Good day.
How's it going, buddy?
All right, it's just the two of us. It's weird.
I know, man. It's like there's no Dave. It's like the Hex, man. You never know what's gonna happen. One day Dave's here, the next day he's gone.
Yeah, we never know.
Damn.
Let's give him a nice shout out again for all his contribution over the last 9 weeks. You know,
really. I'm gonna pour a little tea out for Dave.
It's a bunch of water now. We got equipment here. So expensive. But yeah, thanks, Dave, again for all your hard work.
Yeah.
Forgot to do all your introductions. I was gonna.
Yes. Who are we? Who are these people talking to you right now?
Shall I go first?
Yes.
Or
please.
You want to go first? All right.
You go.
Hi everyone. Name's Tom. I'm still 50% of the Catching Up with the Nerds podcast. Again, I'm married to my lovely wife Ellie, and we have two kids. One who's just turning 4, tomorrow, but by the time this is out, I mean today. Louis, happy birthday, and the other one who's 11 and a half, Emily. Both of them are turning into nerds, just like I am. So I guess our podcast is doing a good job. I am massively into video games. I love everything that is comics. I am an avid fan of Batman, as you will find out today. What else do I like? Yeah, I like Dragon Ball, but I think we've established that in previous episodes. I like Dragon Ball, and that's about it. What about you, sir?
So I am Juan Carlos Garay. Everybody calls me JC, and I'm originally from Honduras, but currently live in Portland and made my way here via 10 years in London, where I met Tom. I am married to an amazing woman called Fiorella, and I've got 2 kiddos, one that is also coming up with a birthday. So first of all, shout outs to Louis. Happy birthday. But also Arabelle will be turning 6 on Friday. And then I've got I got an older one that's also 11 and a half named Aiden. And managed to start to get him into the DC universe finally, because he was a bit resistant. And I'll use that to pivot to, what are we talking about today, Tom? Could it be DC related?
Yes, it is. We are, let's reframe. We are a week away, or less than a week away now, from the Snyder cut of Justice League. I can't say that, Justice League. So that's coming out next week. And we thought we'd just take a nice little dive into the world of Justice League, of the DC universe, and go back. So, trying to find out what the Snyder cut is, how it came about, and what is a Justice League, who are the Justice League, which is what we'll start with first. And, who is in there? Who is part of the gang, really? Just like us, we had our little mini Justice League going on for the last few weeks, and now it's down to just, you, Superman, and myself as Batman. Let's go with that. No? Oh, really?
I have issues about this.
Sure.
You've been a Batman. You've been a Batman fan longer than I have. I'll let you have Batman.
You can be Robin. I'll be Batman. It's
fine. I'll be Aquaman.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm less annoyed by Aquaman. I'm generally annoyed by Superman. Not like on a general basis, but I find him an annoying character sometimes.
Okay.
We'll find out more why.
Okay. But first, before we dive into that, anything you've enjoyed this week? Anything nerdy you've picked up on that tickled your nerds? So
staying on the DC side of things, I think I've mentioned this to you before, Tom, in our warm-ups, but I've been watching the Harley Quinn show on HBO Max. And I was watching that at the same time as WandaVision. Actually, I left this out of our WandaVision episode, but I will have to say, I have been thoroughly enjoying Harley Quinn show a little bit more than WandaVision. I think we established that we went a little too nerdy with WandaVision and kind of like spoiled it for ourselves by giving ourselves too big expectations of what the show was going to do and not do. Whereas I think that I went into the Harley Quinn show with very low expectations, because I was like, show about Harley Quinn, and she's like a C character. I'm like, it'll be fine. I'll just pass the time. I just really did it because I was bored and people had said it was really good. And dude, the writing is so good in that
I need to get into it.
Yeah, it's episodic still. Is like there's like the bad guy of the week and stuff, but it does still have like an overarching plot. But it's mainly like Harley, how she changes and the relationship she has with the people around her is like there's a little bit of like the unbeatable squirrel girl there, where sometimes she like talks her way out of problems instead of like killing or bashing people. But then as soon as she talks her way out of her problem, she turns around and like murders like 10 people. So it's animation. It is not kid friendly, people. This like I wouldn't let a kid like younger than 16 watch this, honestly. And even then it'd be on a push. But it's really great writing. It's in the way that Deadpool is very, very but very, very good writing. That's the way I would compare it to.
Do we take from your review that it's better than the Harley Quinn movie that came out last year? Bird of Prey.
Okay, so we need to go back and revisit that movie, because I did not hate that movie. Really? And in particular, like every scene that Harley Quinn's in, I think it's like fantastic. Actually, especially when she.
I lasted 10 minutes, and then I had to turn it off. It actually irritated me. I could not go through it.
Eyeballs are on fire, sort of thing. It's like, no.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. It was just too much. Maybe I should try again. Maybe I should give it another.
There's some elements of that movie that I think fall flat, without a doubt, and there's some casting that I think is questionable. But I think that movie does more for DC than I thought it would, given that I was like, why are you, out of all the DC plots you could pick, why would you go with Birds of Prey? Like it's not like I hadn't heard of Birds of Prey, but I'm like, there's so many other compelling stories, and I kind of get it. Actually, I kind of get what they chose that one. So yeah, we could definitely do.
I'm not mad at the choice. I'm not mad at that choice. I think if you can go with anything these days. I don't really mind, as long as something is made. As long as a movie is made, I'm cool with it. So. Yeah, it's just I think that the way everything was over the top was a bit like it's a bit much. But again, that's Harley Quinn. Everything is over the top. But I'll give it another try. I'll see what.
Exactly.
Maybe I wasn't in the right mindset to watch it.
And just like bring it back to the Harley Quinn show, that's one thing to be very aware of. Like if you take like your DC mythology very seriously, like you will not mess with the DC mythology. They mess with it tons on that show, but in a very clever way. Not just mess with it for the sake of doing it, but it does to like get you more invested in the plot in a cool way. Sure. That's what I like about it. It's not just trying to be controversial for the sake of controversial. And it does get controversial with like the love story that develops. Like you'll never see it coming before you start the show. Like
no spoilers.
about 10 episodes in, you realize it, and then it's just like, oh, that's the relationship, and it is super cool, dude.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I need to find where I can watch it in the UK. I don't know if it's maybe it's on Netflix. I don't think it is. I would have seen it.
Yeah, I don't know over there where it would be, but it's worth looking at. If not, then bootleg.
We don't do that here.
Yeah, we don't do that there. Sponsors, we definitely don't do that here.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So, Tom, what have you been watching or checking out lately?
Well, I got my hands on mine is video game related, but I got my hand on an extremely cheap Xbox One, and I've been nerding out on two games actually. Forza, which is just your straight up racing game. I've heard only good things about it. And I thought, you know what, I don't have that type of games on my PS5, so why not go with it? It's dirt cheap right now at the moment to collect for those consoles, which is last generation. And I went with it. And the other game, which I thought was outstanding, is called Hellblade. I don't know if you heard about that. It's set during the... Oh, what is it? I had the game like super close, but it's set during the Viking type era period, and you're following this girl. I think she's called Sonara, something. I can't her name. I played for just an hour, and the interesting angle is you don't really know what the storyline. I think it's about avenging her boyfriend / husband who died. I don't know how, because again, I've not done any research on it. I've just been told that the game is really good. But the interesting part of the game is that it's heavily using the mental illness that is schizophrenia.
Oh, really?
So she's got multiple voices in her head that are telling her to do stuff or not do stuff, just to turn around. But carry on, kill that guy, stop it. And it's playing over like, and it's been the entire thing's been created with the help of psychiatrists.
Really?
That were telling the developers how to sort of the symptoms that you would have if you were mentally ill that way. If you were suffering from that mental illness, you'll be expected to react certain ways, not react certain ways. Yeah. So that heavily impact the way the story is told and impacts the way she reacts to certain scenarios and things that are happening in front of her. So it's quite interesting. It's a vastly different take, and it's hugely creative and visually amazing. Like I've never seen anything done that way before. But again, I'm just about an hour in, so I'll probably give an update on another episode because it blew my mind. The hour I played was just so good, so good. That was like, it won a bunch of awards as well, that game. So it's you want it, you buy it.
What's it called again? Hellblade.
Hang on, let me just put up the name. Hellblade. What's the actual thing again? Let's go one of those. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Senua. Senua's. Like you don't really hear any Senua.
Okay.
And it's really, really good. It's by the studio called Ninja Theory, which is quite big. It's on all consoles. It's on PS4, Xbox, Switch. And it's dirt cheap right now. I think you can find it for about $10-15. It came out 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. Yeah. Not that expensive. Right. So that was
cool, dude. Nice recommendations. Like you rarely hear about like mental health playing a role in the plot of a video game. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's heavily they explain it like one of the first things to come up in the game is like this is a visual representation of schizophrenia, and we worked along psychiatrists and psychologists and trying to understand how that works. And very interesting, very interesting take.
Yeah, so let's jump into the Justice League. So one of the questions we want to answer is the Snyder Cut is coming up, and why should our audience care, right? Why should they nerd out about this new version of the Justice League? Like, what's interesting about it? Why should people tune in this weekend?
Yeah. So if you don't know, it's dropping on the 18th of March, which is what? Is that on Thursday? Friday? Thursday. Right?
Yep.
So where do we start, JC? I think we start with who is the Justice League. I think that's the first question. People want to know.
Yeah.
By the way, we'll assume you guys who are listening don't really know much about the DC world. You guys are Marvel fans and you don't know about DC. So that's the angle we're going with. This is what we're going for. So yeah, who is in the Justice League? So I've done a little bit of research, JC, to find out the answer to that question. And obviously the Justice League is a bunch of superheroes. It's like the Beatles of superheroes. It's like great musicians, but they decided to form a little band and be better together. And it was created by DC Comics, obviously, and that was created by a lovely writer named Gardner Fox during the silver age of comic books. I like that say, and I decided to put it in my notes, leave it there. And I think the original name was Justice Society of America.
Correct. Yes.
Which obviously, America. So obviously the band, the group, the members are as followed. So it's Superman, you, JC, Batman, myself, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, which is cool. Aquaman, your favorite, and Martian Manhunter.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And I'm not gonna lie, I had to look up Martian Manhunter because I totally forgot about him. And turned out he's rumored to be in the Snyder Cut. That'd be cool.
Oh yes, yeah, there is actually. Great.
So we'll get to know him. And then a bit of history. They first appeared as the Justice League of America in the Brave and the Bold comic, The Brave and the Bold, number 28 in the 1960s.
Interesting.
So it's not a new concept, obviously. DC being an old comic. Now, so that's who they are. That's who the Beatles of the comic worlds are. Who's your favorite in there though? Because you say you went too hard on Superman.
No, yeah. I mean, my favorite has always been Batman because I think I don't know. I feel like if you're a dude and you grew up in the 80s, like you're gonna love Batman. Like it just like
Yeah.
the Michael Keaton movie coming out at the end of the 80s, like the Batman the animated series is in full swing. It's just like our generation was perfectly placed to like that character. So you just got it. But no, from the existing Justice League that we've been introduced to, I mean, besides Batman, I do like the Aquaman character quite a bit. Just because it was just such a refreshing take on that character, in that for me, my connection to Aquaman was like the Justice League cartoons. And and he was just the most useless character in that whole cartoon. Like, like I was like, oh, look at all the stuff that we're doing. Aquaman, can you get us some water? Or it's like, can you get a few fish to distract the bad guy? And he was just such not a cool character. Like his costume was really bad and stuff. And then they cast Momoa, and it's like, oh, like, you get so much more from that character. Like he got the biggest upgrade, I think, out of anyone from the Justice League.
But I like that one sentence that Ben Affleck says to, if you not watch Justice League, there's that one scene where they first meet, where Ben Affleck goes and Batman goes and get Aquaman to join Justice League. Yeah. He's like, oh, so you talk to fishes? I'm like,
exactly.
Get it out of the way. Get that one out of the way. First thing you say.
Because that was like one of his primary powers, right? In the cartoons, like he projected that thing out of his forehead. He's like talking to fish, and the fish would turn around and like, all right, what do you want us to do? And it was always something like not very meaningful, and like the overall thing they were trying to get done.
No, I think it was funny. Yeah, it's funny because Aquaman is like, it's not really anyone's favorite character really in the nerdy world. Like I don't see you barely see anyone wearing Aquaman's t-shirts or costumes anywhere. Like whereas Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman, like, or even the Flash, like massive. You see the t-shirt with logos everywhere. It's just not the same league really. But it's I think it's been made cool again by who they casted out there. I agree with you on that one. And the film is actually quite good.
Oh yeah,
it's actually quite good.
Dude, like Octopus is playing the drums. Like, what's not to love about that movie? It's like, they like introduced so much crap in that movie. Like all this entire underground world that you can make. Like you could have made it like 3 different movies.
I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would at some point.
Everything at you, which I kind of love about that movie.
Right, so now we've established who our favorites are. Let's dig a little deeper into the story of the Justice League movie and how it came about, what happened. So believe it or not, they started developing the live action movie in 2007, and George Miller, who is the director of Mad Max, was first. He was signed on. He was actually attached to the project big time. So that would tell you that would hint to me that the hint would be that that would be massively dark movie. They wouldn't mess around because Miller's style is always very post-industrial, nuclear war stuff. So it's like, where are they gonna film that?
But can you imagine the visuals with Miller? Because don't get me wrong, like the Snyder has some pretty amazing visuals, but just like stuff in like Mad Max Fury Road, like that scene where they chasing him down with the trucks, and there's a guy with the guitar hanging out from the front truck, and we spend like a good 2 minutes just focusing on that guy. Like that's a real director choice, and I love that about Miller's movies. Like that would have been very interesting to see what it looked like visually. Because also, I reckon we don't get a movie that's that, like, it's like there's a real like gray wash to the whole movie. I don't know if you call that desaturated. I think
it's color grading. Yes, desaturated color grading.
Yeah, it's a bit desaturated. Where I'm like, I think the colors would have been much more impactful with a Miller movie.
Well, we'll get back to that in Justice League at some point, where a certain other director gets signed on to the project, and that's where they change stuff around. We'll get to that point. But I agree. So at the time, Warner Bros. Wanted to fast track the entire project to release by the summer of 2009, but that got postponed, stopped, whatever you want to call it, by the Writers Guild of America strike. Do you remember that? Bunch of projects were either cancelled or just were brutally put on pause, and yeah, that messed up a lot of things. So the Justice League movie was one of the casualties of the writer's strike, which was bad time. And then I think eventually the project got cancelled altogether because of financial issues and production delays and stuff like that. So it wasn't up until 2014 where they picked up on the project again. But George Miller wasn't attached to that. I think he had other commitments, so they signed with Zack Schneider, who's now entering the scene. If you know who Zack Snyder is, he's the director of 300, Watchmen, Man of Steel, which we'll talk about in a second, Batman vs Superman. He's a great director, visually very gifted. It's one thing that everybody knows. There's the Schneider touch, it's like those beautifully well shot. If you watch 300, you know what I'm talking about. Those action-packed scenes where everything's slow motion, and then suddenly there'll be like a zoom in, and the pace will pick up quickly, and then zooms out to go back to that slow motion effect. Yeah. So it's very visually striking, and it's really interesting to look at in terms of from a creative side of things. So yeah, the movie itself is part of it's the fifth in the installment of DC extended universe, the DCEU as we refer to right now, and it came on the heel of Man of Steel, which is a Superman origin story. Yeah, it is. Batman vs Superman, Suicide Squad, and Wonder Woman. So that's part of that.
So the interesting thing is, and also Aquaman is in there, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, Aquaman's in there too. It's after Aquaman's actually after that. It's after Suicide Squad, Justice League.
Because interesting thing what you said right now, which I had not realized until now, if George Miller was attached in 2009, we don't get Man of Steel until 2013.
Yeah.
So they were going to kick the whole thing off with Justice League, not with Man of Steel.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So it's
never realized that.
It's revealing to one thing really, is that and we get back to it again in a moment where there's always the comparison between Marvel and DC in the way they've run things. Is that if you look at Marvel plan of action, is everything's planned ahead for the next 10 years, or at least for the next 5, 6, 7. DC sort of dropped the ball a lot on that side of things, like in terms of planning. They just went, just felt like they went, oh my god, superhero movies are cool again. Especially in 2009, that's when it started. Iron Man just came out and it was like, it was made cool again. And so then they went, oh, shoot, we gotta do our thing. But I don't think they really planned that far ahead. I don't think they really thought about, how are we gonna make sure our stories are sort of relevant. Every single movie is going to intertwine with the other one. How the stories are going to knit together. It feels like they went, oh, now they're doing Avengers film. Let's do Justice League. Oh no, they've done, it's really badly done in where they organize things. But yeah, if you're quite right, that would have been the first thing to come out, and without having any origin stories before that on Superman, even though they're super famous characters, but like you still want a different take on Superman, you want a different take on Batman, you want a new origin stories for Wonder Man, the Flash. You want them to be reintroduced to you with new actors, new faces. And then you fall in love with them, and then you want to see them team up and take on, and also not only the superheroes, the bad guys also. I always say that the good thing Marvel has done with Thanos is that you get to know him over a bunch of films. You don't get to see him, but eventually he gets there. You know what he stands for, you know what he wants to do, and you want to ultimately defeat him, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the prime, again, we'll talk about it in a second, with the Justice League film. Which we don't know who the baddie is. Or we don't really care. Should we talk about Man of Steel a little bit? Because I think it sets the whole thing up.
Well, before I jump into that, though, I do want to touch on a little bit what you comment on right now, which is basically the fundamental strategy difference between DC and Marvel in terms of their film universe, right? Because I think for fans out there that have questions about, like, well, what is DC all about? Everybody just says this crap and stuff. One of the distinctions that I see that has given them very different results is that Marvel has a Kevin Feige, right? In the same way that like Star Wars had a George Lucas for a long time, which eventually that became Kathleen Kennedy, which eventually now is becoming, at least it looks like, Jon Favreau to a certain degree, or Dave Filoni, right? They have people that shepherd along the franchise, not the movie. They're looking after the big picture. And I felt that DC just didn't have that in the same way. They didn't have like one person like shepherding along the whole franchise, like looking as like a whole universe building kind of exercise. But the flip side of that, and there is an interesting flip side to it, it's like that's why the universe has never come together outside of like Zack's movies, right? It's never meant to be like universe up until like Zack really picked up and ran with these movies. But at the same time, the DC movies, I think, have given their directors more creative freedom. In that sense, it's like when you look at movies like Nolan's take on Batman, and then you look at like Zack's take on Superman, which we'll talk about shortly. You get like, I mean, like there's James Wan definitely had a take on Aquaman, which is bonkers and out there, but super cool. And then Patty Jenkins, you're talking all about like grade A directors, like directors that know their craft and aren't going to show up to listen to someone else's notes. They're going to show up and have a point of view. They're all auteurs, right? They're not like traveling directors that just kind of like sign on to the next thing. And I feel like some outside of a few Marvel directors, I feel that that's more the case. Like Marvel picks like younger directors that are out of like indie movies that, for lack of a better word, they could probably push around a bit more so that they can continue with the overall vision. And that's what's required, right? If you want to continue all that, like you only get a few moments like James Gunn in Marvel movies where it's like, that's an auteur. Like he has a definitive point of view on his movies and they're going to look a certain way. They're even color graded differently, which he would have had to like pull so much weight to get that done with Marvel because they're all colored the same way. That's one thing I do appreciate about the DC universe, that the directors get to do their thing. It just doesn't gel as a universe for the rest of us, unfortunately.
That's very true. I think the in a way it's a little bit more true to the entire comic universe, which is, you know, like you have different writers, you have different artists that will draw the cartoons, as they used to, they all have a different take. They all have a different take. You know, you everybody in the discussions will go like, oh, I prefer this Batman from the line. It's the same thing with the movies. I think what the issue is that there's always going to be meddling from executives at Warner Bros. And DC, which, because there's a lack of understanding, a lack of clear vision in terms of like long-term clear visions of what needs to be done, that messes things up, you know. And then we'll talk about it in a second. There's a bunch of stuff that have been issues that were added onto the film. There's a bunch of things that were that were asked. Schneider was asked to do in terms of things he had to achieve within the movie, and in terms of duration and stuff like that are not really, you know, welcome when you're a creative director. It's like, you know, it's like, you should have told me before we started filming the thing.
Correct.
You know? So, if you don't mind, let's chat a little bit about Man of Steel. Did you say you've watched Man of Steel recently? You said, I think.
Just did a rewatch this week. I hadn't watched it in years, actually. So yeah.
And it's funny because I did rewatch it. Well, not to prepare this episode, but just out of nowhere, I just started to watch it. It was probably about five months ago, so it's my memory of it might not be as good as yours on this. So what was your take? Was it the first time? No, it wasn't the first time we watched it. It was another. Okay.
But it's the first time since it came out at the movies. So at the movies, I was there, I'm pretty sure opening weekend to watch it, and I haven't watched it since. I liked it the first time. Liked it even more the second time, I got to be honest. Like it actually, it held up well for me.
So there's a lot less silliness in the film, right? There's, for example, somebody pointed out, and I really like that observation, there's that the costume design in the Superman, in Man of Steel, is vastly different. For example, he's not wearing the red underwear, you know, anymore, which makes him, you know, if you go back to the old one, it makes him look like a clown a little bit. Like, why do you have your underwear outside? Like, what were we thinking on that day? No, there's none of that in there. And then if you look at the movie itself, the fight scenes are a lot longer. Also, there's a lot more buildings blowing up. It's not just him going around. There's one scene in the old Superman films that I always remember is that he had, because Lois Lane dies in one of those old movies, he's got to go counterclockwise to the Earth rotation and then just reverses time by spinning the turns the Earth backward. I'm like, how does that make sense? So there's none of that in the new ones. It's a lot darker. It's a lot more grounded into reality. It's a lot more of a character study into what makes Superman as a human being. Like, how does he get to being a human being? How does he integrate within society? And again, somebody else has pointed out, it's actually an immigrant story. It's like this alien guy that moves onto, in this case, another planet, and he's got to find his ways. He's got to find out who he is. He's got to find out who the people he's dealing with are, how he's going to deal with them. And so it's quite, and he's got two dads, right? He's got Earth dad and he's got the alien dad. So he's drawing from the two influences to become a good person, or not, So. Yeah, what was your take on it? And I liked it a lot. Like when I watched it the second time, I enjoyed it a lot more than the first time I seen it.
There's a lot of takes here, but we'll start off with just like some stuff that you touched on, like the fact that it's less campy and more serious. That's definitely a big choice, and let me start with this. What was the first Superman movie you watched? You remember?
The first Superman? Oh, I think it's the one I was mentioning, the one he's got to save Lois Lane by traveling.
I feel like that's either the third or fourth one, possibly the fourth. And that was actually my first Superman movie, the fourth one, where he has to like face off this like alternate Superman that Lex Luthor creates, and it's really bad. It's arguably the worst one out of all the movies, easily. It's the first one I ever saw. And if you go back and watch the first and second movies, there are movies that are a product of their time. Right. Sure. It's like it was all about like America can do no wrong in the 80s. It's like capitalism is the great like a savior of society, and you see all those themes play out in that movie, and about this like super rosy optimistic version of Superman. And that's why it's like it's campy, but I feel like it's campy intentionally in a way they're trying to make a point of like Superman just stands for all the good in this world. Sort of thing. And that's the thing about the comics, right? That when we first started off, it was that like Superman was I see Superman as an analog of Captain America, funny enough, more than anybody else in the Marvel universe, because he's always just stands for doing the right thing and for being good and for doing this. And like, there's like no flaws to him, right? The way he was written.
Selfless.
Yeah. And you see that carry through with like the 80s aesthetic and like the 80s kind of like, let's go dominate the world because we're nice guys, American kind of point of view. And you see that play out. And so I get why it had to be that. In the same way where I've now gone back, and this is a separate topic entirely, but like I've gone back and like appreciated the Batman, like Joel Schumacher movies for what they are, and more and less for what I want them to be. And I feel that's the same with Superman. Like don't get me wrong, the fourth one has no way of validating that movie. That movie should have never existed. But the first and second ones, actually, there's some good moments, and Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. Lot, like I think that's up there with like Jack Nicholson as the Joker. He's a very good Lex Luthor.
He's a very good bad hero. I like to put it that way. Gene Hackman is a great actor. So anything he does, especially when he's the bad guy, is just I always love it. For sure. I agree with you. It's very much a product of its time, right? So nowadays you'd expect all the superheroes, especially come from DC, to be more grounded in reality. And Marvel can do both. I think they can do reality. You can have all these little moments that feel very human, but then they also have the silliness that goes with it. And they can go to space and they can be completely unrealistic. But again, that's expected from that, right?
Well, that's the part that I'm still kind of torn about. In that. In the comics, the Marvel universe is actually the more realistic one out of the two, because they happen in New York. They have people in LA, West Coast Avengers,
West Coast.
There's like real places with real situations, and they've always tried to like ground it in like real people seeing the heroes interact, right? Like you get the whole comic run by, was it Kurt Busiek, Marvels, which is just like all the things that happen in the Marvel universe through the lens of like people on the ground, right? So it's always been that connection to people. Whereas DC, I felt like, has played in a much more like interstellar way. Like Stark, like the Avenger headquarters was in upstate New York. X-Men were in upstate New York. The Justice League is in space.
Yeah.
it's like they've always played like in a slightly different level, like a much more elevated level. And I don't know, that's what I find kind of interesting, how they differ. But what we're getting in the cinematic universe,
they flipped it
for
completely.
Marvel. Yeah, it's kind of, it's like, it's really wacky, right? Some of the stuff that's happening, like Guardians of the Galaxy is just a wacky movie, right? Same with like Doctor Strange. So that's where I feel like the way that the universes are being interpreted is very different from both sides. And to your point, it's not playing out the way that one would have expected from the years of comics.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's they've almost like they went 360 and they went, we'll take what you've done. We'll run with that, and then we do. What? But let's move to Batman and Superman, because I've got this lot of sorts of stuff.
No, there's another take on Man of Steel for sure.
Oh, you got more.
So I've thought a lot about this movie last week. What I lacked in Justice League research, I made up in thinking about Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. But the other thing about Man of Steel, so this is the thing that I think is very, very fascinating about it, is that it, in the same way that Christopher Reeve's take on Superman, it's very much like, like this idealistic sort of like always do good or right? And it's like, once again, a product of its age of the 80s. In the same way, what we get today is like, I very much feel that Superman is a product of this day and age. Like it's definitely a take that Zack Snyder, in terms of like making him darker, but I actually don't think what he's doing is making Superman darker, because he's not necessarily making him like have like bad guy sort of vibes in that sense. It's like, even though like that's one of the themes in the movie, sort of, for me, what he's actually making, he's making it political. I think it's super politicizing Superman, I'll take that back and rewind. Okay. So it is politicizing Superman, because if you look at his origin story, it's like his dad keeps going, no, you can't show them, they'll never get it, right? It's like and it very much leans into like, this country isn't ready for something like this, right? It's like, look at how broken we are. What would we do if we got a person like this, right? And from the get-go, Man of Steel has that like tone to it, where it's like, as soon as he becomes a Superman, the world starts to see him. They focus quite a bit on the reactions.
Yes.
If you look at it, it's like, we don't get that level of reaction to superheroes in the MCU until Civil War. Like we don't get a divided reaction to it.
Exactly. And that's a running theme in the Marvel universe. It's like how people are reacting and starting to turn against them. But you're right. Yeah, that's very much. It's been dealt with in the DCEU a lot earlier than it is now, and the acknowledgement of your actions have consequences. And that's the thing in all the movies. It's like, so they could go out and completely destroy an entire town, and it'd be like, next episode or next movie. Nowadays, you have to have consequences for what you do, and that's where most people like it. It's still based in reality, and they could be a political touch on Man of Steel. I can see it the way you describe it.
Because it's gone.
No, go.
Yeah, no. If there's one particular scene that I think is very interesting, where, and this is flash forwarding later to like Batman v Superman, right? But it's like there's a connection between the movies, where like Man of Steel sets up the moment of like Zod and Superman are battling through Metropolis and like destroying the city. Or actually, are they Metropolis or Gotham? I forget, but they're Metropolis. They're battling through Metropolis, and they're like destroying the city, and that you could connect to Avengers, right? Like the Avengers movie, when they're tearing apart New York pretty much. And if you think of the Avengers movie, they're tearing apart New York, and Spider-Man already lives in that New York. Would he see the Avengers as good guys? Like, would he see him as a positive influence when they're like tearing apart his backyard? Because they're fighting aliens, but they're still tearing apart his backyard, and people he knows are probably going to get impacted by what happened.
I don't think he would see it as an issue himself. It'd be like, oh, look, because he's already Spider-Man at the time. No, he's a kid when that happened.
He's a kid.
Right? He's supposed to be a kid.
He's like becoming Spider-Man.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, if he's already attracted to that lifestyle, then no, because he'd be like, oh yeah, I want to be part of that, and I want to defend my city as well. But yeah, as a child, probably not. You probably look at this like, what the hell are they doing?
But if they collapse the entire building that he just got done saving last week from falling off the classic like school bus falling off a bridge, and all his kids live in that building, and then like the Avengers, like Hulk accidentally destroys that building.
Yeah.
There's implication, and that's what DC's dealing with Man of Steel, and then onto BVS, right? It's like there's something big happen, and it continues to come back in the movie. Whereas like I feel like in Marvel, the events that have been dealt with and like the Sokovia Accords and all that, they touch on it in Civil War, but ultimately they brush it off. Like it's an implication, but it has no weight to it at the end of the day, because it just setting up like all the Avengers fighting against each other. Whereas here, like the weight continues. And the reason I bring it up is like, I'm super fascinated once we jump forward to like Justice League, the new cut, is like how much that weight of that moment continues to impact the events going forward.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Because it definitely impacts so much that happens in Batman v Superman. So that's like one thing. It's like, I think there's a darkness and there's a politicizing of Superman. And then the other thing is like his origin story, right? It's like this is where I think that Zack made a very smart decision. I think I mentioned earlier, Superman's not one of my favorite characters at all, just because I'm like, what do you do with someone like Superman? Like, what does he want? Like we are all so attracted to Batman's story because it's this like loss of parents, right? Whether it's like you actually lost your parents, or like everyone has parenting trauma where like we actively are imposing trauma on our kids as they grow up. Like, it happens. We got it. We're going to give it. That's just a reality of life. And we try to minimize it as parents. Like we try to not do it, but it still happens. Right. So I think that's why that story becomes so compelling. But if you look at sort of like this boy grows up in Kansas, he has like superpowers and saves the world. So what does he want?
I think this is when Superman takes on a more of a religious connotation to me, because what he does is he's literally a god, because he's got all the powers. He can do whatever he wants, right? Or if not one of the gods, if you, depending on what religion you follow and what you subscribe to, it's he could be one of the gods that is like. And I think there's a scene in Batman vs Superman when you see him to be sort of revered as a god. In one scene, they're like I don't know if you remember, there's like a bunch of people around him looking up to him, and it's like,
that's in Juarez, Mexico.
Yes, in Mexico, that's the one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they have the what's it called, it's the Festival of the Dead, right? They all have wearing the masks. And that's what, and the interesting side of the story I have with Superman, I think, is how does he handle the power, and how does he handle the fame, and him being super famous, and he could go both two ways. He could go like, I'm gonna be a force for good, or I can be total evil and just made everyone my beep. And this is why I like a movie like Brightburn, which is the other side of Superman, because the only one way we see Superman, or the sort of the take we have on Superman, is that he's being good 99% of the time. Snyder's take on him is slightly more gray. It's like he does some bad stuff sometimes, but he's mostly there to fight evil. Brightburn is there just to flip it around and just go, nah, the dude is a psychopath, and he's gonna kill us all. If you have not watched Brightburn, please go and watch it. It's disgustingly fun. But going back to Superman, I think his story arc is more of one of a god. He's more attached to religion. I think that's why I subscribe more to that than maybe a political. I understand the political point of view you've got about it, but I think he's more of a religious one with him. It's like, what do you do with so much power?
That's where the two themes tie together. It's a case of like when you have someone that has God level power, how do you interpret that as a nation, right? And of course, it's going to divide people, right? It immediately gets politicized because they're like, well, the people think like he's the savior. The people are going like, no, he's not the savior. We need to control him. He needs to work for us, right? So I think that's the decision that Zack took that I thought was really, really good. As much as I know there's a lot of critics out there that like kind of like dump on Man of Steel and Batman v Superman because they're like, we don't want a dark Superman. We want a Superman that stands for like hope and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't think it's either. I don't think this is actually a dark Superman. I just think it's a Superman that's grappling with real world implications. It's a Superman set not in an idealized world where it was like, yay, Superman's great. We totally trust him. And it's more of like, if we got someone that had God level powers, how would we feel about it? And that gives Superman a need. He has a need to feel part of a world that actively is divided about him.
Yeah.
And I think there's no coincidence that Zack wrote it that way because Zack had just done Watchmen.
Which is very much that.
And in Watchmen, you get that same arc which is the genius of Alan Moore, which he gave Dr. Manhattan an arc where he doesn't actually care about anything. He actually grows bored with humans and goes off like, I'm going to go to dimensions and worlds and go mess around. Bye. And he's out. And because it's like, that is the natural progression of a god. It's like a god would not actually be that interested in what we're doing.
You'd be like, you guys are so petty. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a whole universe out there that he needs to look after. And it's like, whether it's look after or get interested in, that's the theme of the movie that I think is most powerful. That he is a god and like the implications of that, and the one source of trauma for him, his dad, the way that he dies is very impactful, right? Because the dad dies in that twister where he goes like, no, don't save me. You cannot show your powers, right? And it sets up that conflict of like, do I show who I am or not? And do I show up to be the person they want me to be versus a person that I know that I am, right? So all of a sudden there, it's a conflict of Superman, and I'm on board for that 100%.
Yes,
it's the same reason why two of the most famous Superman runs are, one, Doomsday, because he dies, right? So there's implications for Superman. And second is All-Star Superman, because he's about to die. And it's about, what is a Superman reckoning with his own mortality? What does he do? All of a sudden, like, it gives Superman an arc that's interesting. And that's why I like Superman written that way, as opposed to like, they're just like, oh, he's great and awesome all the time. Sure, there's a moment for that, but I like this take on it.
And I think that's something I like about the DC crowd, is that they expect their characters to be a lot more nuanced than just like clear cut. He's a good guy. Yes. Which is funny though, because as much as I love Batman and Superman as characters and how they always go like, well, the actions sometimes are a bit dodgy, but it's to achieve greater good, but sometimes they'll cross the line. Funny enough, I'm also a massive Captain America fan, which is the ultimate opposite, right? It's just like, no, I'll do whatever. I'll take one for the team. If that means I have to die and never see my family again, but the country moves forward, I'll take it. No questions asked. Fine. Which is admirable as well, but it's a very different take on characters.
Yeah, Man of Steel is the exact opposite of that. It's do I save you guys or not? Because I totally can. Do I? Because you guys are being like kind of a-holes every time I save you. So do I do it?
Do I have to? I'm busy today. So I feel like what you said is a great pivot into Batman vs Superman.
Yes,
because it's also within the first few minutes of the movie, there's the very much the god take on Superman is very much you see it there, and it's touched on a little bit. So I think and you've watched the Ultimate Cut, I think is where you watched also yesterday or a couple of days. It's funny you said out, because I literally took also the Blu-ray out, which is I bought a couple of years ago, it's got the Ultimate Cut, which I think I watched once. I need to go and watch it again. And I remember watching the Ultimate Cut, and I went, wow, why did we not see that shit? Like, why did we not see it? Like, this is where it should have come out. It's 3 hours long, but who cares? Do it.
It's really good, actually. Like, I gotta be honest.
For anyone who's seen Batman vs Superman and thought it was crap, It's probably because you've watched the theatrical release, which is 2 hours and some minutes, which was completely cut down by DC and Warner Bros. Because they wanted to achieve that the 2 hours magic mark time. And that doesn't work because that meant that Snyder had to get rid of a lot of different very important scenes, and that in turns create a bunch of plot holes, and it goes, it's nonsensical at times, where it's just like he goes from one scene to another where you're like, wait, what did I miss there? But I have to say, I actually love it because it's got two of my favorite characters on it. So whatever whatever happened in that film, I was always on board, and I would always have loved it. But again, so if you go back to the movie itself, there's another affirmation of the style that Schneider wanted to go with, which is like super dark, very much grounded within reality, and you get two different characters that are now on a collision path with one another, because obviously, like you said, the end of Man of Steel is set in Metropolis, where Superman is destroying absolutely everything, including old Ben Affleck Batman's offices.
Yep.
and it's the first we see of the new Batman, Batfleck, which again got criticized a lot, but I'm not gonna lie, actually I love a different take on all the superheroes. That's why I'm not mad at the Joker's Jared Leto's version. And I love Batfleck. I thought he did it very well. Like the take on him, the setup for him being there was, it's now an older version of Batman.
Yep.
And you can tell, like, from the very first scene, it's a Batman that has seen stuff happening, like bad stuff, and he looks tired, he looks gruffy, he looks almost beat up. Like the first, like when you think Batman, you think like a guy that's like nicely clean shaved and like a nice suit. And like if you remember the opening scene, it's him in the middle of Metropolis, like sleeves up, rolled up, like a 3 or 4 days beard, scruffy hair, and he's looking around like, what the hell's going on? And then he goes and save a girl or whatever, the usual hero stuff. But I like that take. I like that it's not a Batman that is kids friendly. It's a Batman that actually in the movie kills, right? He actually is lethal in that one.
We were having a point of it because I watched it with Aiden, and yes, this was his first R-rated movie that he's watched. Because that's something to note, is like the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition does get upgraded to R-rated. It's R-rated not for any sexual content. It's R-rated for, like, I think just increased violence. And because Zach was like, in the comics, like, Batman rarely, if ever, kills someone. I think there's maybe been one person ever.
He never kills. He'll beat you up just enough so you're in bad shape, but he'll never kill. But I think in the comic runs, there's Robin gets killed by the Joker,
correct? Which
is briefly touched upon in the Batman vs Superman movie.
Oh yeah,
there's that one scene when he walks in and he sees like the costume. Is that in Justice League? I can never remember.
No, Batman v Superman.
It's in this one.
He sees a costume there,
and he says like there's a graffiti of the Joker put on there. It's like a tag, and he's like, I killed Robin or whatever. And it's from that moment in the comics, when that happened, when Robin gets killed, Batman goes mental and just starts killing people, and that's what they went with in the movie. And I was like, yes, finally, go and kill people. I want to see that.
So that's what it's like. Yes, I think he does kill people. There's some you could argue is like, that guy could have made it, but it was very questionable whether he was going to make it and actually have a meaningful life. So a lot of those goons were not going to go on and like go play tag with their kids, unfortunately, which is very sad. No. So, he does kill, but not a lot. Not a lot. He has, I think, the fewest casualties.
There's that one scene where he goes and he's trying to rescue Superman's mom.
Yeah, that's the scene.
Oh my
God, killed a few dudes there.
He killed, but like that scene, I think when I went to watch it in the cinema and when that scene happened, I was so happy and taken aback by the violence, but the reality, like the trueness of the violence. You know what I mean? Like when there's like he grabs someone and just smash them against the wall, like smash the face against the wall. I was like, whoa. Usually you'd be throwing a batarang or whatever, and or like you'd be trying to escape and throw a smoke bomb or something. And then he's just like bang bang, like the you could feel the power in his fists. Like you could see you could feel the punches almost. I was like, yes, that's badass. Yes, please.
He didn't like jump into the place and just look around and put up a zip line and then just zip line right back up.
Yeah.
because I never realized like the Michael Keaton like Batman in that scene with Joker when he's like, where does he get those wonderful toys? It's just a zip line.
It's a zip line, dude. Come on. Go to the hardware store. You get
I did a rewatch like a week ago or so, 2 weeks ago. And yeah, I was like, yeah, some of this are a little bit daffy. And so this is where like I enjoyed the more violent Batman, but I always have this feeling like I always like there to be additional violence only has a meaning to it. Like it's somehow like helps the character along in some way. Not just he's violent because he's cool being violent. And I do feel in this Batman, it is merited. In that you
there's
see
a reason why it's there.
Yeah, it's like you see him next to like God level people like Superman, and then he runs into Wonder Woman, which is also like she's like super amazing, and then he's like, well, I'm Batman. It's like he's got to bring
my power is money. I've got to
pretty much, right? And that's where I feel like this was done well, because they need to show like how much more he needs to be in order to be even in their team, right? He needs to just be this extra like powerful human. That's why we get the training montage of him training himself just to like stand up to these gods, right? So it's like, the violence I feel is merited, and it does move along the character. So I'm in the same place, dude. I think Batfleck was great, and I think that Ben Affleck played him great. If I'm honest, like given what he was given to play, I think he played him great.
Yeah, he was the take on the character that was tired mentally and physically, but then had to do it one more time, and using different means, and using and he, like you say, he was fighting gods and alongside a goddess. So he was like, you've got to bring it up. You can't just be here's a smoke bomb. Yeah, can't see me now. Okay, cool. So it's really cool. I liked it. Not so much the first cut, but I think if you can get your hands on the ultimate cut, it's a entirely different movie, and it's well worth the watch. But yet again, when he got released, he was actually killed by critics and fans, some fans, because he was too dark, because he wasn't as funny. No, it's not funny at all. Even the entire film is not. It's not. You're not there to laugh along and at the characters or with the characters. And also, it's because this is Zack Snyder film. It's super slow.
Yeah.
So these things you have to remember when that film came out. But Batman vs Superman is when? That's 2016. 2016. So you're well within phase 3 of Marvel at that point.
2016, yeah.
Right. So at that time, you're like you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, you've seen Thor, you've seen Iron Man. Like all these movies are funny as hell. The Avengers film, they're all funny. They all have that. Yep. The one thing that Marvel does well is comedy within the superhero genre, and it's quite interesting to see. And it's not something I was expecting to see as much, to be honest. Like, so I'm more like I grew up more of a DC fan, so obviously there's less well versed in that sort of aspect. And that's what's going on there, and that's where the trouble starts with for Zack Snyder. It was like his vision of the entire thing was dark. But then executives at Warner Bros, they went, no, you see what's making money on the other side? Colors, jokes, fast-paced. And that's not what he was going for there. Actually, I just saw something. We didn't even talk about the plot. Well, it doesn't matter. That's something else. But it's Batman vs Superman is literally what it is, right? It's Batman vs Superman fighting. The one massive thing that pissed everyone off though was the reason why halfway through the movie when Batman vs Superman happened, fighting, and they realized that actually they are the same. And they are friends, and they could be friends because their moms have the same name. Martha. This is when I almost punched my my TV the first time I saw it. Punched someone in the cinema. I was like, no, let's not do that. I don't want to see that.
Okay, so yes, I have a lot of thoughts about this. There are 3 movies happening in BVS at any given point. There's Frank Miller's Batman happening, because that's where that showdown comes from. There's the Doomsday run, from that where we know that Superman gets killed. That's happening as well. And we're having basically a continuation of Man of Steel and a setup for, actually, no, 4 things are happening. It's a continuation of Man of Steel, and it's a setup for Justice League.
Yeah.
That is one of the only things that I will say about this movie, that this could have been 2 movies easily.
Easy. Yeah.
There's a lot happening. And I think that's also a reaction to Marvel, where like, no, we just need to move things along much faster to get to Justice League because we need to have our Avengers moment. Which makes
sense in terms of marketing, but in terms of with the fans, it's like you're rushing things. It's like you've got to build. Like, it's okay for you to be years behind, but build it up.
Correct. And that's the part that I felt like there's no way of there's no way. I couldn't see an easy way of getting out of that scene between Batman and Superman without having that, unfortunately.
Yeah,
because when but I agree, it's like that's not what it should have been. That's not how that battle needed to end, because that's certainly not how it ends in Frank Miller's Batman. Sure. Because they take the setup but not the rationale for the battle necessarily, because in this case they're both being actively manipulated to battle against each other. Whereas like in Frank Miller's run, and it's been a while since I read it, so I may stand to be corrected, but it's more just like Batman realizing what the symbol that he stands for, because that book is all about symbolism at the end of the day, and then realizing that Superman needs to be kept in check. So it's more of a message to him. It's like, I can keep you in check because that's what I stand for. It's like balancing out what's happening in society. Right. And you're a god. And it deals with Batman looking at him as a god and going like, I need to do something about this. Whereas I feel Batman v Superman does that to a certain degree, but you have the Lex Luthor manipulation of having them both look at each other as like somebody's doing wrong. And I feel like you didn't need that. Like it's because it's still trying to set up Lex Luthor as well. You need Lex Luthor messing with the two of them, but you could have had a Batman v Superman movie of just Batman having that moment where he sees Wayne Tower collapse, knowing all the people that died because of Superman. That's enough motivation.
Yeah,
that's exactly enough motivation for him to have a battle and somehow make it so that as all these things happen, so at the end of the battle pays off something that happened earlier between them that they realize they both have in common, right? There's like, exactly. How does a man relate to a god is how that battle ends, and them relating to each other and how God relates to man, right? But because of Lex Luthor messing with them and all that sort of stuff, they have to end in a different way. And the ongoing theme is their loss of their parents, right? Like the movie starts with the traditional scene of like Bruce Wayne losing his parents again for the 50,000th time. But we also see the relationship of Superman to his mom was set up really well in the previous movies. So having that be the one motivator that will make him do something like try to take off Batman's head, thematically it makes sense. Like I like the setup payoff of that moment, but the way it was executed, like what'd you say, Martha?
No.
So we could have done that a little differently.
It's exactly that. I think I was mad at it the first time I've heard it. I watched it the first because I was half expecting it, but I was like, surely they're not going to go there.
Yeah.
But then the second time when I watched the ultimate cut, I went, it's not as a massive, big, like dark spot over the entire movie. Like actually it's just a scene where it's like a pivotal scene where it's like, okay, now they've realized X, Y, Z, let's move on. I think it's more of a shock thing when I watched it the originally. I went, but the second time it wasn't the thing that was like in the way of the movie, in the way of the plot. I was like, okay,
correct.
It makes sense now. Now we've seen this, everything that happens before that. They need that moment to get to the last act, right?
Correct.
So it's not it's not all bad. I think he got a lot of slack at the time because of everybody got a bit like, where you get.
And it could have been better. It could have, if it had just been a movie to just pay off Batman v Superman, and then a movie to set up Justice League, which would have been I understand how Doomsday sets up Justice League. I think that's actually really clever.
Yeah.
Right. But it's not just like, we're a bunch of like superhumans or called metahumans. We're a bunch of metahumans. We're just come together to like save the world because we're all good. It's like, no, that's not the rationale for it. It's like we lost the one person that could defend us from external threat, kind of like Sword, right? Sword is about looking outward to the universe. Superman was their like universe level savior, and we lost him because of Doomsday. So I'm like, that I get. And that pulls the Justice League together. Totally 100% that did not need it in the same movie. It really did not. Like it needed to be two. So yeah, but having said that, I really enjoyed the movie as a whole. Like,
no. Again, ultimate cut, amazing.
Yeah. I can't tell you the differences. Like I can't sit and go like, oh, and that happened, this happened. Like because I saw BVS when it came out in 2016, but I remember just walking out of the movies going like, I like that because I've always wanted to see that face off. And at that time, I hadn't read Frank Miller's Batman yet. So I was like, I've always wanted to see how this happens, but there's something that doesn't sit well with me about it. And also, I was on the Marvel train, like you brought it up earlier. It's like these movies I think are totally different if Marvel isn't happening at the same time. Like Absolutely. If this universe kicks off in the early 2000s.
Absolutely, 100%. And funny enough, you're taking me to the next point I was going to talk about.
There you go, segue.
Which segue into what happened with Suicide Squad and Justice League. So now we're going to talk about Justice League. So obviously, now you've got all the execs at DC and Warner Bros. Going, hey, we need to match what Marvel's doing. We need to, line it up a little bit.
Yep.
So Snyder and screenwriters around him, they started to work on the script again and say, oh, what can we change? What can we make? Try to make it a little sexier. So if you watch, we're not going to talk about Suicide Squad, but if you've seen it, there was the opening scene, the opening credits are made with neon colors and everything. So you see this trying to get into the Guardians of the Galaxy sort of vibe, and see a bit of a lot more colors, a lot more things going on. But then again, same thing. They had two directors on the film, and the film feels absolutely discombobulated. It's like, it's like the first half of the movie, and then bang, new director, the second half of the film. We can talk about Suicide Squad another day. We should go into that one.
Oh, that's a whole other movement, right? It's like release the Ayer cut is another hashtag.
That's another hashtag.
And the fact that Zack got his second shot, it says something. But at the same time, like the next one is going to be a James Gunn movie. And I am so there for this for Suicide Squad as a James Gunn movie, like totally there for that.
I'm very much looking forward to that one. So that should be amazing. Suicide Squad is funny, and they in many ways they're like Guardians of the Galaxy. They're like people that shouldn't be heroes, but they are.
Yeah,
and that's what I want to see.
Oh, actually, sorry. Smoking hot take.
Go on.
Harley Quinn is the Suicide Squad we didn't get. The Harley Quinn show.
Okay.
It's exactly that. It's a bunch of people that should not be heroes that are, and the rationale for them getting there is so much more compelling than what we got in the Suicide Squad.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree that it's what it should have been, but it isn't. Can't go back now. Okay, everyone. Thanks for listening to part 1 of this podcast. We will have part 2 dropping very, very soon. In the meantime, if you could like, share, and subscribe our content. We are currently on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Podcast, and pretty much everywhere on social media, especially on Instagram and on Twitter. That's where we're most active. We're also on Facebook, but we don't like it there, so you won't catch us there that much. Again, in the meantime, please subscribe, please like us, please share, please comment. We'll be eternally grateful. So on Jason's behalf and myself, we'll see you in the next one.